my name is Anastasia Cook. I am a 3D artist and I work at AlphaDog Games, which is owned by Bethesda. And I'm going to be going over basically how I create a character for 3D modeling for video games. Yeah. And then I'm just going to share the screen. Awesome. So designing art for 3D game development. Designing for 3D is a lot different than designing for 2D. So I'm just going to go over basically what that means. In terms of concepting art, when you're doing stuff for video games, you have to really pay attention to the volume of the character you are creating. And feel free to ask questions along the way if you have any questions at all.
Sounds good.
How much do you play video games?
I used to quite a bit.
Okay, so what kind of video games? Like your Mario, more shooters?
More shooting like Halo and stuff like that.
Okay, awesome. So the models in those games specifically are called high poly models. So that's where a game engine can handle like really high poly characters, and you'd want to model a lot of those details. Where I work in mobile game development, we want to go for the more low poly spectrum. So I'll explain what a polygon is actually in a little bit. So just to start out, I'm going to show you, pretend you didn't see any of this. So to start the process, what I would normally do is I would do a basic volume sketch. So a volume sketch is trying to figure out the proportions of my character that I'm going to be designing. Every game, every piece of art, every artist has a different art style, and that art style dictates the proportions of the things that you're going to be drawing. So sometimes you see these characters with like really big heads, really tiny bodies. Sometimes you see characters with broad shoulders, thin waists. It's all artist preference, but depending on what I'm going to be designing a character for, I will try to figure out the style guide before I even attempt to do anything, because I want to make it look like it belongs in the world from the get-go. Because if I draw a character with a massive head and a tiny body and it's supposed to be in Halo, it's going to look really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next process is the sketch. So this is messy. I'm just playing around with lines. It doesn't have to be pretty. I'm just flicking my wrist a bunch, seeing what I can kind of get out there mentally. I try to figure out what clothes I want for it. The proportions, again, I want to figure out how I want it posed, all that stuff. Whereas I'm trying to do a character for 3D, I would normally put it in a T pose or a 3/4 arm pose. So kind of a T pose would be my arm stretched out straight so I can see the entirety of the arm and the sides without anything visually cluttering. Normally, for what I do, I bring the arms down a little bit so it's a more relaxed position for when I get to the process of rigging. That's a different conversation though. That's an entirely different pipeline. So I'll forget about that. But yeah, so the arms are going to be kind of like halfway down right now, just a more relaxed position so we can see the sleeves better and the entirety of the body. Next, I do a line art. So I take the sketch that I just created and I add lines. These can be varying levels of detail. I went super simple here. This is a quick character I drew last night. So I just wanted to get in there the sizing, the volume. I would normally put a little bit more skin or line art weight to certain lines. So anything, the forward of the character would be a thicker line than what's behind the character, because we want the visual interest to be at the front of the character. And next, I would go over the wireframe. So this is what we are going to be doing today.
Sounds
Basically,
good.
what I'm going to explain is one of these squares here. Okay, so one of these squares here is called a polygon. A polygon is basically just a 4-point of geometry that an engine can read to say, this is a mesh. And a mesh is basically a cage for an object in a game, and that's what you see when you're playing a video game. Meshes can be of varying densities. So the more of these little tiny squares that you see, that's called mesh density or poly density. And what you play in Halo is going to have more of these little squares than what you see on your phone. High poly, low poly are fairly similar in pipeline. One would use more maps than the other, and maps is a separate thing to worry about, so we won't get into that. Whereas the low poly would be more influenced by textures. So basically me coloring in a image that is overlaid over top of the cage, and that's where you get the color and the design of the character.
Okay.
Any questions?
Not yet. This is also
Really?
interesting.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I love to hear that. Okay, so going back a little bit for a step. So when I'm designing a character as well, I need to really pay attention to volume. Because I've been doing this for so long, I know when I'm designing a character, the primitives I get to work with in a 3D modeling software. So a primitive is these little boys here. So your classic sphere, your cylinder, cubes, all of that, they're just your basic shapes, like what you would learn in elementary school. I play around with in a 3D modeling software, and I modify, adjust to make it a character. And that is called box modeling. Box modeling. Another way of modeling is called poly modeling. So polygon modeling is a different way. I don't normally do it, but I know a lot of people who do, where they will basically draw square by square and extrude it out, something like that, until they get the desired shape they want. It's a lot longer to do, but you get everything super exact. Whereas I'm starting out with these primitives and I'm modifying it and building it out until I get the shape that I want.
Okay.
Any questions?
So far, so good.
Okay. So what I'm going to have you do today, and I'm going to be along here with you, and we'll just screen share and I'll kind of watch it while you do it.
Okay.
I sent you a photo of this character right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out the topology for it. So once I have a character all created, I start doing these little lines here because that kind of tells me in my brain when I go to start 3D modeling, I already know where the topology is going to flow and how it's going to look like. So right here, if we zoom in, yeah, so right here we can see that I want this mesh to kind of flow towards the back of the hat and this to be behind her head, kind of. So when I go in to figure out a character before I even 3D model anything, before I even open the software, whether it's Maya or Max, I want to make sure I know how this character is going to flow and if it makes sense. And this is the best way to figure that out. That's non-destructive. So yeah,
Okay.
you want to open up that character. I'll just quickly go through how you're going to make those lines. So you're going to grab that brush I explained to you earlier. And
I think I have it. Yep.
Awesome. And you can kind of look at mine as reference to like what you just saw. And I just want you to like follow the form of the object. So like, I'm just going to have you draw a simple line. You can follow actually that line at the top of the hat and just follow it all the way down.
Right here?
No, see where at the bottom, oh, I'm pointing. You can't see me pointing. I'm like, you're like, oh, right there. So yeah, follow that line.
And then go up?
Nope, I just want you to follow that line to the other side of the hat. So just follow the line I drew already. Yep. And I know you're on a trackpad, so no worries if it's stuttery or anything.
Yeah, I
That's
should have got a mouse.
It's fine. Awesome. Okay. So when you do that, I know as a 3D artist, if I get this character and I see that line and you did the whole topology draw over, I know that I'm going to have an edge loop, which basically means when an edge, so each polygon has 4 edges to it because it's a 4-sided object.
Yeah.
And an edge loop is basically all those edges connecting to go around a character evenly. So there's a billion ways to do this, but the best way is like I will just add edge loops to a character if I want to up the geometry or up the poly count. So I know when I see this character, I need an edge loop to go all the way around that specific area.
Okay. So much information.
Yeah, I know. So now what I'm going to get you to do is just do another edge loop a little bit higher than that one. So you're just going to follow the same kind of like little swoop, but just do it a little bit higher. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Like that?
Yeah, that's perfect. And you're just going to keep doing that until you reach the top of the hat.
Should they all be like even spacing or does it
Yeah.
matter?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in 3D modeling, you want everything to kind of be evenly spaced. If you can have straight lines, you want straight lines because it's easier to texture, it's easier to animate, it's easier to rig, all of the above. So the cleaner the mesh, the better. And that's why 3D modelers are in such high demand that have experience, because knowing these things, knowing how to make a mesh, clean, knowing how to do the right topology flow is everything for animators, riggers, all the pipeline.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. At the top, do I just like connect it to right here, like that line?
Yeah. Yep, you're gonna do that.
Do I still okay, sounds good. Okay. Kind of like this, or should it be rounded out? Or I should redo that?
I'd round it just a little bit. Because you
like round down or round up?
Round down. So I want you to think of a hat. So the hat's on your head and the top of it is kind of flopped over.
Okay.
You want it to be even, and then that's perfect. And then at the top over part, you can kind of just tuck it in behind the hat. So just pretend like the line is continuing around the hat.
Like which part?
So click right there, and and just bring it down to the other edge of the line.
So here?
Yep.
Like this?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, because you want to kind of picture that line's continuing, but it's just behind the hat, so you just can't see it. And then you're going to continue it with the next one. So see where it's kind of making that triangle shape? You're just going to do, the bottom of the triangle to the other bottom of the triangle.
So right here to there?
No, there to down.
This to?
Nope.
This to here?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Like that?
Yeah, there you go. So now if I were to model that, I'd have all of those edge loops already visualized for me. I know exactly what it looks like. I can already see that I'm going to take a cylinder and I'm going to pinch the top of it to make it real small. And then I'm going to have all those edge loops around, and then I might extrude the top and make that cool little bendy bit. And then there's the hat of the character.
Okay.
Yeah, so next we're going to pay attention to, let's do the leg. Let's do one of those legs. Yeah. So for the leg, I know I'm going to be using a cylinder because a leg is very cylindrical anyways. So all I'm going to do is I want you to draw a straight line down, and I want you to ignore that boot completely, because when I would be 3D modeling this, I would make the inside mesh first. So that would be like just basically the naked person. You wouldn't actually be naked, but it would just show the form of the body, the legs, all of that, so that if we wanted to change the clothes or do anything, that would just be extra mesh on top. There's certain instances where the character is never going to change their clothes. This is them and them alone, and you might model it to it. So like I would remove any polygons that are under like the shirt or the pants. But in most cases, you want to make it available for artists or future designers to be able to remove the clothes or change stuff. So we're just going to draw a line from the knee down to where the ankle is. And it's just going to be a straight line. So I'm just going to get you to start the line at the hip and then draw it all the way down to the ankle. And it can just be a straight line.
I'll try my best.
You're doing great. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Here?
Yeah, that works for me. So I'm gonna actually get you to change that line just a little bit because I want you to follow the outside of the leg.
The outside? Okay.
Yeah, so from the end of the hip and then just follow the outside of the leg down to where the ankle nub is. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. And then you're going to do the same thing on the inside of the pelvis and then draw it all the way to the inside of the ankle on that same leg. And you can see where that sock is, and that it's going to be like an identifier for where that's going to come in at.
Here or keep going down?
Keep going down a little bit. There we go.
Oh.
Awesome. So you can already see underneath that character, that's what her leg's going to look like. So me as a 3D modeler, I see that, I'm like, oh, that's her proportions under the clothes. I know exactly what to do. I'm going to take a cylinder primitive and I'm going to now think, okay, where do I want my edge loops for this? So this is where it gets interesting because I know it is a human character and it's going to be moving. So I'm going to hand this to an animator to animate. I'm going to want to make sure there are more edge loops around the areas that bend than the areas that are not bending. So on your leg, obviously, you would bend at your knee, your hip, and your ankle. So I want to make sure there are more edge loops in the center of the leg, around the hip, and around the ankle than I would worry about on the calf.
Okay.
So if you want to put like, I don't know, 3 edge loops around the knee, 2 edge loops around the hip, and then say 2 around the ankle.
Oops, I should redo that.
No worries.
Okay. Is that too thick, do you think?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay. All right. So are these ankles good right here?
Yeah, that's perfect. So now you're going to just do the hip. And for the hips too, so if you think of your hips, it's kind of like a triangle, right? Where the bones come up and then down. So I want you to kind of draw the edge loops on like an angle, if that makes sense.
Okay. Like this? Oh, it's not coloring. Okay. Right. Oh, there we go. Like that?
Yeah.
Or is that too straight?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
There?
Yeah, that's awesome. So now looking at this, you can kind of see where the character is going to bend, where you want more geometry versus other areas, and you can kind of see how a 3D modeler might, bring that to life.
Okay, awesome.
Any
that's
questions?
pretty cool. No, that's so cool.
Okay, here, I'm gonna bring up mine again if you don't mind. Okay, can you see mine?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you take a look at mine, I did a really quick pass on where I would do my topology. So for a lot of mine too, I want to pay attention to where it's dipping, where it's bending and stuff. So if you see on the face, I kind of did a bump there because I know I want to draw a nose on my girl and I didn't want to model it in. So I know I can texture like I can fake a shadow where the nose would be popping out. So I don't actually have to build that. Especially with low poly modeling, with what I do, there's a lot of cheating involved. If I don't have to model it, I won't, because the more of those polys that I explained earlier, the more expensive the character is in terms of how much it takes to have it appear on the screen. And if you're doing something for like your phone, you want it as little poly as possible, because that means you can put more things on the screen that your phone can see and make it prettier and focus more of your budget on other stuff. So yeah, so if you look at this, I kind of worked through what primitives I would use for each area as well. So here I'm saying I'm going to start with a cylinder for the hat. I'm going to build it out starting from the base here. I'm going to use the bottom of the cylinder to follow along the bottom rim of the hat, build it out from there, and then I'll do the rim separately. I'm going to start with a sphere for the face because human heads are very spherical anyways. I'm going to dip it in where the eye sockets are and bring it out where the nose is, and then probably texture that just hand painted later on. For something more complicated like hair, I normally start with polygon modeling for that because hair, you want it kind of looking more organic and dynamic. I like to poly model that, which means I take the picture that I have here and I would just literally trace it using Polygon Builder in the 3D engine or 3D modeling software. And then, yeah, I'd build all these objects separately. And then I'd be able to pull, say, the hat off of her and then have hair underneath. I would be able to move her boot around and all that stuff. Like I was explaining earlier, I'd build the mesh underneath. So all the blue that you see on the screen there, that would all be one mesh. And then the pink would be another mesh, the red would be another mesh, and so forth and so on. So all these pieces I would have come together in the end, and that would be the full character that I would hand over to a rigger. The rigger is basically someone who puts bones to a 3D model if it's a character, and rigging it makes it animatable. So it's this big, long process, but essentially at the end of the day, you get a cool moving character in a video game that people can love and play around with and explore with. And it's a really rewarding process at the end of the day.
It's so interesting knowing like this is the basis of it, because what we see on the screen is like nowhere's even close to being like this, and it's nice to see that that's how it's made.
Yeah,
That's pretty interesting.
it's a long process. Like even like in high school, I had no idea being a video game designer was even a job, let alone I'd be doing it someday. Like being a developer, like especially as a young girl, like I had no idea that I could make a career out of this. And then I did skills and I was like, hey, like I can animate. That's pretty cool. I wonder if there's jobs out there where I can like do this. And originally I was like super into Disney. I really like the cutesy art. So I was like, you know what, like I'll see if I can do animation. Unfortunately, the 2D animation program wasn't for me. So then I went to 3D animation and I fell in love with it. I already had a liking for video games and I graduated, got a job, and I've been in it ever since.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah. Any questions? I think I kind of rambled.
Honestly, I love all that information. I do have one question. So, if this is one piece, like say if it was to move, would you have to create like a whole nother piece showing it's like in different like design, like different position, like its body part?
So do you mean like if it were to move?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, so if I were to take her, so say I
Mhm.
made her in 3D, I could spin her around. She's all modeled out and she's in that kind of like 3/4 arm pose that I was explaining.
Yeah.
What I would do is I would hand her to a person who does rigging. And rigging is
Okay.
basically the guy. So here, let me quickly explain that actually. Let's see. Okay. So a guy who rigs or girl who rigs would basically take the mesh. So I'm going to work with this line art version of her, and they would basically say, this is a head bone. This is a chest bone. This is her center of gravity. So where the center of the character is going to be, it's called the cog or the center of gravity. And then this is going to be her hip bone. This is going to be her knee. This is going to be her ankle. And then she's going to have cute little feet. And then basically you do this. And then depending if you want like the fingers to move or not, you would put so and so amount of bones. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. If a character had wings, you might have bones going to like that so that the wings could do stuff. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing with my mouse. That's awful. If you wanted the hair to have like a crazier movement, you might put bones there so that it could bounce up and down better. If the hat, you wanted it to be a separate piece, you might give it its own bone. And then an animator can go in and he can basically move these bones around and the mesh will follow.
Okay. So that's pretty neat. So you wouldn't have to like redraw it every single time. It's just okay.
Yeah,
That's so neat to know.
Yeah, and that's why we kind of put them in those default positions too. because we want it to be completely neutral, like no facial expression. It's literally just like, and then the person who's rigging will come in and be like, okay, I want the sides of the mouth to be able to like smile big or like frown hard, and like they will set basically hotkeys to where these are, or blend shapes. So if I want her to go from a super smile to a super frown, like that would be a blend shape. So they can just drag up and down and they'll go from one extreme to the other, which makes it super easy for animators to come in and be like, okay, I want her to be kind of smiling. And instead of like having to redo the entire character, take a picture, and then that's a frame, they have this neat little slider and they can just be like, be super sad. And then she's super sad.
That's so cool. There's
Yeah.
so much information too. Oh my.
I feel like I'm explaining like 6 different people's jobs too, but like it all goes hand in hand. So it's hard to explain one without like leading into the other, because it's so many it's so many different things to get this character from thinking of what the character will be to out the door in a game. This is my portfolio site, ArtStation, which goes hand in hand with what you are going to explain with portfolio building and everything. But so what I would do is I would draw this character the way she's positioned right now. And then once I would have her built out, you'd be able to see all of her 360. And
Oh my god. That character looks so cool.
thank you.
You know what it reminds me of? It looks like have you ever played Zelda?
I love Legend of Zelda.
It kind of looks like those characters. That's what it reminds me of. That is so, I love the outfit too. That's a really cool design.
Oh, thank you. I get a lot of she looks like Jasmine, which I didn't intend it to look like, but it just so happened. But remember how I was talking about wireframes? So this is the character you would see on screen. She's low poly for mobile. And once I hit the wireframe button, do you see that poly flow I was mentioning before, where the lines loop around?
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so right now she's in tris, which means it's cut into triangles versus polygons, which is the 4 shape. But like 2 tris make a polygon. So it's essentially the same thing. But yeah, no, you can see the edge loop, you can see her legs, you can see where things are gonna bend. So around the neck area, I have more polyflows. If I zoom in here, you can see where the nose bumps out, and you can see that. I wish I dropped the poly count on these earrings here, but that was me going back and looking at it now. That's just something I would clean up because I don't need all those edge loops there. That's probably way too dense for what it needs to be in low poly. But what probably happened is I made the primitive, which is just that forget the word for it, but that circle shape. Oh, torus. I made this torus, and I would have just thrown it in last minute to give it more character, give some like visual interest along the ears there. And yeah. And over here, you can see like eventually, oh, I do have bones in there. So when I was talking about the skeletal structure, these are the bones that the animator would use to move the mesh. So each polygon is skin weighted. So skin weighting is a freaky name for basically rigging the character so that when a bone moves, these faces, the poly faces that I explained, those little squares all over the character, those will move along with it. So if I move the shoulder joint up, my skin, say it's all polygon, will follow that bone wherever it goes. So if I wanted to take this bone and throw it across the room, my skin here would follow with it, but the rest of me would stay positioned because the rest of the bones aren't interacting. But every other bone in this chain would follow the parent joint, which is in the shoulder. So when that arm goes, the rest of my arm goes, but I stay perfectly still. And that's how you get characters to move around and do crazy stuff.
That is so cool. I love how much detail goes into it. Like looking at the earring, how it had so much like all the tinier ones, and then the whole body was like bigger shapes. It's like you would never think how much detail goes into this. That is so cool.
Oh yeah, and there's
I love the outfit. That's so cute.
Thank you. Like there's loads of characters like you can make too. Like there's no limit to what you can do here.
Oh my, I like this one. This one's pretty cool
He's just a
looking.
cute little samurai guy. It's for a
It
game I made with Atari, so I'm allowed to talk about this project, which is fun. Normally there's a lot of NDAs where I can't mention what I'm working on. Oh, there we go. There's an easier to look at Polyflow. So look, you can see exactly what I meant. The lines go right through. And actually, something I didn't mention before, what I'll normally do is only model half of a character. If I know that this side of the character is going to be exactly the same as the other side, I'll only model one side and then mirror it over, and that saves half the time. So if this hand's going to be the exact same as this hand, why would I model it twice? There is a lot of cheating that happens. And then right here, you can see his bones. So because I know it's low poly, a lot of the time we'll actually only model this finger, and then these are all one unit, because 9 times out of 10, if you're gonna grab, you only need these fingers separated, and then the rest of these can just follow, because you're not gonna see it in mobile. There's no point adding the extra bones. And a lot of this I can just texture in too. So the difference between modeling and texturing is basically, see how this is a flat shape, but it looks like it's three-dimensional, this
Yes.
gold
Yep.
little piece here. So I textured that in, which means I went in and I hand painted it to look like it's three-dimensional, but without the color, you can see it's just a flat surface. There's no bump there where that gold trim is. That was all hand drawn in. And it gives the illusion of polygons that aren't actually there. So it saves on the character how expensive it is in a game.
That's pretty neat. And it's
Yeah.
super, I like how it looks. I like that gold.
Thank
Nice.
you.
So is the ones on his chest like that too? Is the gold there, or is it just the helmet?
Yeah, so if you look here, it's all flat. These rivets are all just painted in, and there's a lot of neat little Photoshop tricks you can do to get that in there. And it just comes with time. It comes with playing around. Like I said, this character is a little bit old. Looking at it, there are things I would change. I've definitely evolved my style, how to model since then, but yeah, he's cute. He's got some gold bits, and like the eyes like are completely painted in. Like there's nothing modeled there for eyes until you hit the color,
Wondering how
and
you did
yeah, cool. Yeah. So I just wanted to give a 360 example on what I was explaining, and like going from this to this isn't as hard as you think in terms of like figuring out the shapes, the forms, the volumes. Once you understand 3D space and how to work with it, then you can start drawing characters. And even if you're not a great artist, you do not have to be a great 2D artist to be a wonderful 3D artist. There's a lot of people out there who do 3D art who can't draw, and it's more understanding how shapes work, how to optimize your workflow, how to do the polyflow, how to make it optimized, and yeah.
a lot of cool information. That's
Yeah,
so neat to know.
thank you. So
You're
yeah, I
so
hope you learned
talented.
something today.
I definitely did. Definitely probably could never make it. But definitely learned a lot of cool tricks and some information. So neat. So
Yeah.
pretty too. You're so talented. I love it.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it was great talking to you, and I love explaining what I can do, like what I do for a living, because it's so behind the scenes. It's so in a small desk in a cubicle, just tipping away at my my keyboard, but the results are always fun.